Hello team, welcome back. Day 7 for Java plus Python training. Hope you're all doing good. So team, we've been making progress. Each day we've been learning, we've been doing assignments, and glad that you're able to work on those. Today let's cover two most important topics, team. How do we do and why do we do file handling, and what is all about exception handling. So primarily team, just to give you a perspective, Java or Python, or even if you look at C# or any programming language, is nothing but a bunch of commands. So all your data could be inside our code itself, like I've hard coded here, or your data could reside in external files. Now that file could be a simple text file, it could be an Excel, it could be a JSON, HTML, APIs, listen APIs, or you could read it from a database also, or interact. So where do you store the information? Where do you get it from? Your programs typically have what we call as the logic of what we have to do when we need to do certain things. But your data, like the banking applications and so on that we're working, instead of having them hard coded in here, we could have it centrally located in a secure vault, like a database. So for each interaction of how this happens, for Java to interact with text or an Excel or a JSON or APIs or database, or Python, there are different commands or libraries that we can use. Few are built in, few you have to keep doing it here. So let's basically start with something more in terms of simple file handling with Java. And at this point, what I will do is let's go to our project here, Java March 2020, and I'm going to create a new simple text document. And I'll say this is a sample. Okay. Oh, there's already one sample. Did I create a sample here? How come? Oh, this is Java March. Sorry, it's a different folder. And I named it exactly the same. So this is our folder thing that we have Java and Python together. And here, let's create a text file. And so these are notes or log.txt. Okay. So there's nothing in it. I'll say this is line 1 and line 2. And let's say line 4 and last line. So this is the content that is contained within our text document. So now for us to read this, what we use is a concept called IO. IO stands primarily for, in our computer programming language, input output stream. So how you do input and output from these external files. Okay, there are text or JSON or database files. How do we interact with them? So input or output. So both, depending on how we are interacting and how we use. So you'll get exposed to a lot. Let's understand some of the basic concepts. So J12. So I'm going to go create J13, and let's call this as file handling 1. I don't have 2, but at least 1. So I've got my simple program here, nothing much into it. Now, all I know is where my file is located. So I'll say string my file equals the path of that file. I need to know where these files are located. For me, that address is critical. That is the minimum information that I could provide. So my file equals starting ting, where is it? Here. So I can right click on it, go to properties. I usually go to security here and copy this entire path from here. And when I paste it in Java, do notice that single slash becomes a double slash. This primarily an escape character to say take it as a single slash, backslashes, or you can do one forward slash also. But keep two backslashes, that's relatively easy. Make sure you have the entire path of the file including the extensions. That becomes my file team. Now there is an input inbuilt thing. This is where our Java IO comes in place. And if I say file F1 equals to new file, and in this I'm going to talk about where that file is located. So I'm just giving the location to it. So at this point, team, you'll start noticing that there are certain libraries that may be available, but you need to import them. So import is the feature that comes in for us when there is a specific library or a Java archived resource that is available for us, and we need to use that. So those reusable functions, let me explain that once again. Everyone doing good? No, this is what file. What is it? Java by itself has its core libraries, built-in functions. So you can do things like print or if or while. All this have specific meanings within Java. When we use some additional features team, we have to be able to pick from a library. And that library has to be imported. Why doesn't Java import all the libraries that it needs before we do it? Because it gets heavy. It does not know which one to search. So all the execution overall becomes longer. So you want to just get as needed, only when needed. Not only when needed. As you need, you want to add these libraries. Otherwise, your overall package will become larger. So if you take your mouse over file, it will suggest, because Eclipse is an IDE, an integrated development environment, it will give us that help and assistance for quick fixes. So take my mouse over file and I say import java.io. So this basically helps me to start reading from it. So that's some of the read packages are available. So at this point, there is another thing called scanner, the same thing that we used to use for taking inputs from the user. So earlier, we used to take inputs from the user from command line. Now we are trying to collect the same using what we did in the text file. It's the new scanner F1. So again, scanner is something that we have to import like we did earlier. So I'm going to import this. Pretty much touch and go, so should not be a big challenge. Now here comes the problem with throw stick declaration. Okay. Exceptions may happen. See, I'm commenting one with Java, one with Python comment. So, and that is what we will learn as the second topic today, exception handling. But for now, I'll just say the concept that this can throw an exception. Why does certain part of Java tend to throw an exception? Now I'm saying that, hey, there is a file at this location. What if the file is not there? What if the path is incorrect? Or what if that file is not accessible by you, or you cannot write onto it? Then what happens? Then it will throw a runtime error. So when you want to handle those errors, we will use that. It's my data, this. Why is there an underline on my data? Can anyone tell me, please? Quick answer. In the meanwhile, I'll just print, say, just print. Why is there anyone? Got few responses. I'm looking at them. Perfect. Very good. Not used. So if it doesn't get used, why are you defining? Is it an error? It's not a syntax error. It is just a warning or an information. Good. Thank you for your attention there. So now I'm going to say my data. See, println my data. So let's just do this team and see what happens first. Save, run as Java application, and save as. This is the problem with some of these. We give some print here, start of or error comes if I'm doing any copy paste typically. Come on, file save as with problem process. Let's save this as file link to Java. What happened? I don't see it here. Let's refresh. I thought that 13 number things would happen, but it did. 2 there in our source, correct. Say okay. It's not doing it. It's just that it's an issue that's happening with our Eclipse team. I'll restart it. Second new class J14 underscore file handling 2. Let's say finish. Control A, Control V, file handling 2. Then at least I'll get a print here. That I'll put here. And I'll put one more print here. This end of my. So anything between, it'll let us know. Search for this. No, not we don't need to use buffer reader for this. One second. It's not even saving these. Why? J14, sorry. Even then, it's not saving it. Let me Google for a good fix on this. Java CP1 perfect. I'm looking for anything from. Let's see what Stack Overflow. Stack Overflow is here. Ting ting ting. It sounds like somehow you're getting a character in the file which you can't get represented in the CPA encoding, which you can only deal with the limited range of characters. Which can deal with just about anything. Such as a single file open properties in the source page. You can also change the default text file encoding for the workspace and preferences in general workspace page. But why should this fail? Now, see if I take even a regular one. So it may be deviating a little, but it's important to fix. SP1. And I say hello. And I want to run this. See, that's the problem we keep doing. Save as UTF-8. Let's see. File properties and the resource page. Change the text file encoding value to UTF-8. So let's say file properties, and we're looking at in the resource page the text file encoding value to text file encoding further, and do this to UTF-8. line close, and run this again. Now to do it for the entire project, preferences general workspace. Click. General workspace. Text file encoding other to UTF-8 and apply and close. Finally. So I don't know why that occurred, team. It should not have. It did. So I just Googled the solution. That's all I did right now. I mean, forget it after 6 months, but I'll again Google it and find it. This happens when I'm doing a little copy paste of different formats, team. Or I don't know if it handled anything to do with file. It didn't really go into the file section yet. Now let's go into J14 itself, right click, and let's say run as. So here, basically, we are talking about, I think, start of my code and then file not found exceptions. This is an exception saying that the file is not there on line 13. So here, when it's trying to find this, why is there no file? Let's make sure. I see the file. Properties, security. Back to our code. Same one. No difference. F1 file. Start of the code. Is any process holding that back? Let me close those text files. Sorry, team. Yes, Java.io file not found exception is still coming here. This should be not an issue. This is SQL and training April log.txt, and that's the file. Why would it say file not found? There we go. So now it worked. I don't know why it did. Let me see what was it earlier. No, there was the same thing, but kind of did nothing, but it worked. So for me to read this data, team, I'm just not going to print my data. What I have to do is on my data, which is right now pointing to my file called F1, and F1 is sitting in here called this specific path on the system. So when I say my data dot, I will see a lot of methods or functions that you can run on it. It's primarily to fetch data or remove data or to append or add data into it. Now what we are going to do is print line, not find in line. So a lot of options that you can explore, but we're looking at printing whatever is there line by line. So if I say next line and run this, it'll print whatever is there in the first line. And then I'm actually going line by line at this moment. So how many ever print statements I give, it's going to print so many lines for us from the file as an input. Now, what typically happens for us, team, is you need to close these files once you're done with reading. So whatever you open, my data, once you're done with it, you close them. Because if you don't close it, it will primarily start printing from that specific point. So look here, line 1, line 2, line 4. If I close it and try and print, of course, it will be an error here because the file is already closed for us. So you cannot do it here. You cannot read after file closed. Makes sense? Now, you could do even simple writing onto these files, team. Writing is not very tough. You need to know where to write, when to write. So let's say the same thing. I'm going to read the data. And there's a file F2, which is in the same one, pointing to the same file though. And I'll say my data 2 is pointing to F2 in this case. And now I want to write back onto this team. So for writing back, this is okay for reading perspective. For writing, I'll need file writers lower or uppercase. New file writer and my same file. Anyone getting bored? Team getting lost? Simple logic. All we are trying to do is say where my file is, open a new file as an access to it, read it for scanning or as an output. And now we're looking at, after closing this file, I'm reopening that file, this time for writing purpose. So, see, now I see here, I just look through my eyes, file writer.java.io. So that is the one that I need to use. File writer.java.io. So this should have also got imported here. Did you see that? Filter writer, no, file writer. This became filter writer. Now I'm using a scanner. Scanner, what is the problem? Cast Arvind F2 to readable. Why should F2 be readable? Oh, file writer. F2. Readable. Okay, but why should I mention it as readable is the question. Actually, I'm just thinking. Just give me a second to think through this logic. Let's finish with this reading part itself because something about this writing. So let's create one more. I'll make that as J15 underscore file writing, and we do the file writing here. Let me just stick with the file reading part in here. Let me take this into the file writing. And the path for the file is the last one I'm going to get here. And I'm going to leave that. So that's as is good. Okay, that's fine. Throws exception. We'll talk about exceptions too shortly. This is what we'll get. But file handling team now, see, for example, I've not gone to all the steps. Let's do the same code, but I want to do something a little different in this. So I'm going to do a bulk comment. Skip a couple of steps because I had so much to cover today, and that's why we face a little challenge. Just checking back now. So I'm going to create another file similar to the file f2 equals to new file. Same thing like what we're seeing about. Okay. mine. It's pointing to the same one. Now I have a scanner. I'll say my D equals to new scanner. I'm reading everything, but I don't know how big is my file team. So I will close the file after I'm done. I want to read all the lines out of it. So if I go beyond the capacity of that file, let us see what happens. We'll talk about. So right now, the only thing that is important is if my D dot has next line. So as long as it has a next line, then I'll keep printing. So how can I put this? I'll put it into a simple while loop. I'll say while this condition is true. So team, I don't think I've discussed enough about Boolean, but did I talk about Boolean, team? Let me just quickly do that so there's no confusion for you there. J16 underscore Booleans. When you look at a state condition like a simple if statement, what do? I'll say int a equals to 10, int b equals 20. Now I'll say if a is less than b, then print a, else print b. A simple code. So it will print whatever is less than. A is less than b, it will print a. No, b is less than a, it will print a. I've not covered equal to. So I'm just going to quickly run this. Proceed. There's a problem in the project, but one single file should not be a problem. So 10, and now I put 100 into it. It should give us 20. Okay, so that's my code. Now the whole concept team is I can declare something called Boolean and say this is my condition. That's a variable. Now, when my condition can be either true, that's a value, that's fine, or it can be false. So what does it mean? If my condition, all right. So I'm going to comment this. I'm going to comment this. Oh, no. So if my condition is false, look at this team, the statement itself. The whole thing will get replaced with false in there. Even with me? I see a hand raised. Is there a question, someone? Divya? I don't know why your hand always gets raised onto the sessions. Just check your inbox, please. So whatever we're putting in here is basically replaced with that condition being true or false. See, the word true or false does not have any quotes around it. It is used as is. It has the same color like the purple color, like Boolean, else, if, int, and so on. Because it's a predefined term within Java files. So this output that we have is inside. So that condition itself is here. So when we do a comparison, we take this the left side of the equation and there's a right side. So I could always put that same condition in the brackets and say if it's true or false. So now if I run it, it'll say the condition is false. Now if I do this, it'll say condition is false again because it will take the latest value. So I'll do this and it says my condition is true. So this variable is called Boolean. That holds only two values, true or false. And you can use it in any condition. So that's a Boolean value. All right, everyone. So why did I speak about a Boolean here? I think we were here. Right. So my D dot has next line is what the my D is actually an object. We'll come to object shortly. But has next line is like a function. When we say go to a bank account and do a deposit or withdraw it and so on, that is a function behind. So this whole thing will actually return a Boolean and it will say it is true or false. So look at it like English. Does it has next line? If it is true, then I'll print. If it is not, I will come out. When I take my mouse over, it also says here. So it is what it returns, Boolean. And it will also show you some documentation about each of these commands. Okay, now I'll say, in this case, my D dot next line is what I'm printing. So instead of printing it arbitrarily like this, I'm able to go and find all the lines and print. Now, why is it printing close true here? Can anyone tell me why it's printing true non-stop? Think of the logic. See, the has next line is this one whole thing will return true or a false. So it keeps returning true because I'm not going to the next line. So when I say my D dot next line, then it will go. Otherwise, my D dot has next line will keep on printing that it is true, and this will also never change because we're not going line by line. That was the mistake that we had. Let's correct that and rerun. So it's gone till the last end of the line. At this point, I can close it. If I try to read one more line out of it, it would basically say there's nothing more left in it. We've reached the end of that file and it has no next line, no line found. So that's an error that comes out. So is an error where you try and print the same here and say once the file is closed, how can you read anything from it? Okay. So that's our file reading team. Let's refactor this. And I'll call this as file reading. Okay. File writing. Let's do file writing. So we will take that same file that we have and we will try and write something into it this time. And for us, I think the process is going to be almost the same team. Let's go here. So I have my file here in my F. I'm going to read it as a regular file for now, team. No, file writer is fine. F2 from my file is correct. Where is my scanner? I don't think I need a scanner here. Yeah. Let me see. Took file writer, my file. So here, if I say F2 dot write, so this would primarily put some lines to it. So how many lines do we have in this file so far? Last line, correct? So after last line, I will add a couple more lines. Let's say, I'll say last line plus 1. Added at this point one line to it because I opened it as a file writer. Now I'll add this line as well. Now since I opened it as a file writer, I can say F2 dot close that file I'm closing it. I'm not reading anything from here. So that is why I'm not using a scanner. And also there's no input output exception as a base. It's only for writing to a file. So now let's see if it writes back to a file. At this point, at least make sure your file is not open to you, because if your file is open, then it won't be able to write on. At the start of my code, it didn't say anything, but it executed. At this moment, let's see if it could write. So go and open up this. There you go. Now do you see the problem, team? It has returned to not the end of the file. So then what do I do? Will overwrite without reading till the end of file, what we also call as POF. So how do I read it till the end of the file? So then I'll say scanner my file, for example, equals new scanner my scanner, and I'll put that path wherever my file is. Okay, it's a mess. Let's import these. Import this too and this as well. Okay, so I've got this. Now what do I do, team? I go till the end of the file. So read the end of the file. We can also go manually, team. I'm sure there's a command to go till the end of the file. Let's try and read to the end of the file first, and then we will see. Okay. So while my scanner dot has next line, the same thing that we were trying to do earlier. So that's my boolean. I will just print and say my scanner. So whatever is used, that input, or go to the next line. And each one I'm taking and printing it. It's changing to has next line automatically. So I want to keep it as next line. So I've reached that end of the file, but I'm not doing a my scanner dot close here. Okay. Because I've just read it from it. Now I'm trying to open write mode. In the write mode, I want to add these. So first, I'll add line 1, line 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6. And 8. Okay. And this is my content. Now it should be able to add to the end of it, till the end of it, and then I can close it. That okay, I've added it. Let's see now. What's that? Oh, what did it do? Which one did it print? I'll write incorrect. I printed, right? So why is that output? Let's see what happened to this. Again, it wrote to it. Line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4. Save, close. Where are these lines coming? My file dot has next line. Again, it's doing the same thing, team. It's not printing anything. Do you see this? It's saying my scanner is not even used. Oh, sorry, team. My file is not there here. I have to say file. Where is the file? My file equals to new file. Sorry, team. Session was going a little more in terms of debugging itself for us. My, I can't have the same thing. My file. I'm reading from my file. So now I'm reading through it, and then I'm trying to write on it. This is already gone for a toss. So 1, 2, 3, 4. This is what I have. Now let's run this. So it's printed whatever we have. Now let's see what it has as a content. It is overwriting to it. It is not appending to it. So to append to it, I think this is overwriting it. Overwriting the old data. So what we will do is at any point in time, I will have the challenge. So the only solution to it is if I don't want it to overwrite the old data, and in fact, this has got nothing to do with reading the file. I'll just say, I think for file writer, there are more than one attributes that can go in. The one is true, or if I enter anything that it doesn't like, it will throw that it doesn't accept. See, because the second one should be a boolean, I believe, true. Right? If I'm not wrong, true as a second argument is not to override. True would append to existing data. So here I'm reading everything. Let's close this. Got nothing to do with that anymore. Here, when I'm doing it, I want to append. So once more, I'm going to change this last time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there is already one. There should be one more. Let's give an empty space. Now let's run. There you go, finally. So it could go till the end, team, and then print it out for us. If I didn't have an empty space, it would have printed like this. I mean, extra line. So primarily, team, looking at the code, you have a file reader where you say where my file is, and then you put that file location into it. You scan it so that you can start inputting. And as long as it is next line, you can read through each line. Once you're done, you close your file. Now, file writing, what we're doing is primarily, this is the one thing. I'm opening it as a file writer, and I'm using the write command on the file. And the only thing that I've done to append is put it through as the append. Now, the reason I showed you a lot of this is also look at the number of runtime errors that we got in as we went about. That is also, I mean, how we do exception handling. But before that, is it okay if I get into reading the same files from Python and seeing how we can do? Any questions meanwhile, please? A few in the chat, let me see. Yes, we need to close this files and scanners team because you're accessing them, and if you keep it open, then other programs or other systems cannot access at the same time. How to stop program to run from infinite loop? When we're running it, Shaker, you will see this red icon here, the stop square icon. The square icon would be red while it is executing, and you could stop anytime during that. So for example, if I put this into an infinite loop here, easiest infinite loop is while, in this case, my condition, and I'll just print, oops, sorry, printing. And if I run this program, so it's running. So this red is your terminate of the program. Sure. Yes, now let's take a look at the same concepts in Python team. I honestly believe it's much more easier in Python, but let's see. So new Python file py13 file read. So when we want to read a file, again, it's the same thing team. I have a file and I'll give a path to it. But in this case, I'm basically using one simple command called open. And the first thing that I'll send into it is the path for it. So the path that I have, I'm going to copy this. And let's put the same in. Okay, so that's my path. Okay, so that equals here. One second. All right. So basically, here's my code. I'm going to say print start, and let's have a print and somewhere. So I know what part of my code is running. The reason I'm putting a start and an end is if I get an end, that means it is ran through everything. So no major issues in the code. That would be a good place for us to start with all this. So run this as is. So there's nothing much. I've just opened the file. Now let us say I say print my f dot read line or read. Let's use read line first thing, and I will do one more read line, and let's do one more. Let us see what the output comes as. Now it's printing it into new ones. Are there actually spaces in our print scheme? I don't think so. So what we can do is, so bulk comment in Python are 3 single quotes all the way back here, and then again 3 single quotes. So that's bulk comment. Like we use a /* and then star back / in Java. Now I'm going to take the same code. Let's try with only read. What does read do? It is reading the file, and that's it. Once it has read the file, it has gone to the end of the file. So reads the whole file. There's nothing much left for you to read again. So what if I want to read a specific line? So let's start with 1, maybe 2, not sure. So just printing this. Why is it giving extra? You give a /n. Fix that extra line for now, team, later. But see, this is basically trying to print something as a line. Which line number? It is line 6. Let's see what we get. It is line 20, which is not there. What would it get? Dot read 1, read 2, read 6, and then read 20. It didn't even give any issue. That's interesting. How many lines does it have? It has only 8 lines, team. So this was a little surprise for me. It went through reading, but also the fact that after start and end, it only read it once, the first line, and then it has gone to the first line. It's finished that, so it is reading from the second line. Just the second line it is printing, then the 6th line it is printing. So whatever is there till there, it's just dividing how it is printing. Where it is printing all the content, whatever you say. Read the first one, then till the second, then till the 6th. I'm saying read it till 20th, it didn't fail for me. It didn't have an issue with it. But anyway, let's keep this as a simple reader for this. We could also navigate through something like end of the file. Read to end of file. Read line, read, file, while end of file is read has read line. So this and a small one, the file. So I'll come to the mode. By default, we're doing it in a read mode. Close, open, read. Give the first 3 characters. For first 3 characters, I see. Then why did it print the remaining? Oh, there were not more than 20 characters, I think, in ours. So let's try this as 100 and run again. No issue still. Close. There is while. Instead of using read or readline method, you can also use file object to it. Okay. Not right. Let's see. While reads up to the end of the file. So after successfully know the end of file, there's no need to check. So that's what the read is doing. It's reading it till the end of the file. So once I have a read, I have data read to the end of the file. After that, there's nothing else to read, so it is not returning anything. So set n. Okay. I think that's great. So where we are, what we're doing with that is right. Now the same thing we can also use to write it to the end of it. Now the print statements is what is giving this extra space for us right now. And what it is trying to read are also characters at a point. Now the same code that we have for write, let us put once and see how that works. P by 14 -5. Okay, so we will talk about two teams. First is append, and then the second will be overwrite. So for append, what we're talking is write to the end of the file. And all I'm doing in this case, team, let's copy these. Here's my file, and the intent for us here is to open this file in an append mode team. So this is the comma and what you can give as a mode. For append or read or write, you can use different commands. In this case, we're saying append. A for. Now, if you look at from a tutorial perspective, W3 Schools is the best one for a list of all those commands. Learn Python, and in this case, you should be able to see file handling. There you go. Java read files. So how you can read a file, there's also good explanation here. Written first 5 characters of the file. So we are reading lines, and so that's the one that we saw. Loop through the file line by line. I think this is the one that we wanted to do for X in file. So that was the easiest one. So here, if I want to just loop to the end of it, let's do that. I'm saying for anything X in my file, and we are printing X dot. No, I think nothing, just print X. And I'm not sure what all it is printing. So same file. Oops, this is file read. So here, and let's run this again. So it's read everything and it is printing one line after the other too. And that is where we're getting the extra line. Back to our file writer again. Now here, all we're doing is the same thing. So I'll say my file, and we can write, and each time I think it is writing to the end of it. If you have multiple lines, I believe you use lines. But here I'm using just a command, and I'll say this is an additional line. Let's finish this and let's close this team because you opened it for a write. So you want to close it. And once you're done with it, let's open this file. So I have to do this whole step again. And I'll just say for X in my F print X. So we just added one line and we're trying to print right now and see what's the output. X not readable. So it says not readable, line 9. What did it write there? It did add that additional line. I want that additional line to come into a new line for sure. So I can use a /n and so on. But what happened to the other, we'll see. So here, if I put a \n special character, it is going to put that for it. Oh, okay. See, this is opening in an append mode. So now I have to open it in a read. By default, I think it's in a read. And I believe now I should be able to read this. Let's see. Make sure your file is closed. That's the only thing. And it says it's done. Let's look at our output. And then it comes to the new line for us. And the write lines command, I think you can add more lines to it. If I say this is a second additional line, and here I'll say write lines upper lower, and this is third additional line, and I can put more team and say comma fourth line, comma fifth line, and so on. But the problem is before each line you want to put a slash n because it can take it to the new line. And we are closing and reopen. R for read is optional team. So you can use this or you're welcome to use without. Either or is fine. You cannot use the same code to read and write from Excel. You have to use something different. So for text files, this is how. For Word files, that will be different. For database, it will be different. For JSON, it will be different. The concept is how and what we are doing. So there is primarily a very important concept called CRUD. So that's basically create. I don't know if you know these operations. CRUD is the first one for CRUD is basically create. So you create database or add data into it. You can read data into it from it. You can update data in it. You can also delete data. So you can also delete these files that you saw, whatever are there. You can try and get them deleted. And for them, I think you need import OS. And let's go back to this code once. And this looks fine for us. So override, we were able to do it when we don't use it as this team, and a few extensions. There is X for create if not exists. So let us say, follow the same logic here. And my file, I think you can say the same name. I'll say log1.txt. Log1 is not there. Let's say log2. And here I'm going to say instead of append or read X, X is create. If not existing. And we should be able to know at that point how it is happening. I can return the data. Let's run this again. File is not open. File is here. So where did this error occur? Line 7. Third line, fourth line, everything looks good for me here. Ting, ting, ting. Oh, okay. So each of these, it's actually going to go as a, I think this is that. Because it is one input as a list. And within that, it will send multiple items. So you remember how we created a list earlier in the previous sessions where I said Bob is the first one, Samantha, Steve, Pete, Isaac, and so on. Our file write, when we say write lines, you're saying that, okay, what is the first line, second line, third line that we want to write and send them as a list. Takes exactly one argument, 3 are given. Should have said that I need a list somewhere. It would have been easy to see what issues. So exit code has to be 0 for us in Python. So now still has an issue, but line 20, the same thing. But at least, let's see if it has created this file. There you go. Do you see that? The file got created because it was not there earlier. So that X created that file first. Even Java will have something like that. The intent is to give you the concepts of what you could do, how you could do, and the basic CRUD operations on anything. So file handling you can do across everything. That was a simple text so far that we saw. Are you good, everyone? Can I show you now the try except and how that works? And please, these sessions just review a lot and watch the video and write your code. I will try and zip this entire folder, what we created, and send it across as well. Please do review from your end. I don't think I'm moving fast, but at the same time, there are topics that we cover in the assignments that we're doing. I also want to share a few things to you so you can start doing some assignments. So new, before I go to, I'll give you assignments. J15, exception handling. So let's talk about the process itself, team, what it is. While execution throws an error, and you can decide what to do. Okay. So it's problem like, let us say, it's like a set of rules or steps to follow what to do if these exceptions are there. So think of it like this, team. Let's say you're going for a car drive, and then if you have an issue, then what do you do? If it is an engine issue, what do you do? If your tire is flat, what do you do? If you have low fuel, what do you do? So depending on the type of an issue, you want to handle it. Okay. So typical real world issues in programming we will talk about. Okay. Things like file not available. You're trying to get a file, it's not there. Or you're trying to do something like find an item beyond the list size of an array. Size of an array slash list. So what happens if there are only 4 names in that list? You want the 5th name. So it will say, oops, I don't have a solution. Or we do something stupid in our math and it gives us divide by 0. So it gives us an infinite number which we cannot store. So there are a lot of exceptions that can occur that you will see. Things like even variable not defined. So there are a few dozen varieties of errors and each error can be classified in the specific section. So let's see how we can work with that. Okay, exception handling is here. So basic exception handling team is very simple. So let us say I do have a variable called I equals to 10 and I say j equals to 10 divided by 0. Now here code looks good, simple, easy to understand, everyone, right? So let's run this. Oops, still running the file, right? Where is my, oh, I named it as J50, not P50. So PY50, let me change. So PY50, refactor, wherever it is interacting or accessed from, it will try to change. Now let's run this. 15, run. So it basically tells me on line 3 it faced an issue. And it says it's divide by 0. And this can happen very easily, team. Not easily, but it's usually not. But it can happen, it can occur. So what do? Your whole program will stop. See, it never reaches the end. Never reached the end of the program. Team, I'll need another 10-15 minutes at least, so please bear with me today. And it's a Friday night, Saturday morning for most of us. So what do, team? I cannot comment it. I want to know. So at this moment, let's say j equals to 0. And then k is n by 0, or k is I by j. That's even better. And I want to print k. Right? So if I run this code, I'll still have the same issue. But if I change this to 1, I won't have that issue. So my data sometimes will work, sometimes may not. I need it to handle based on whatever it is. So that is where I will say that, hey, you know what? All this is fine, but I'm going to try a piece of code. And in this, I'm going to take all of this and put that in there. And then what I will say is, I basically have an exception issue. Except when there is an issue that happens, I'll say print issue happened. Okay, this is my end of it. Now observe to my code when I run this. It will run exactly the same as previous code when there is no issue. When I try and divide this by 0, starts the challenge. And then it says, instead of throwing that issue, it'll say issue has happened. So what was our code looking like earlier? This was my code team. Let's bulk comment it. And I'm going to come further down and again bulk comment. So now, with this being the code, I have improved it with this exception handling. Without the exception, it would have had an issue and it would have not got even to the print issue happen. It will not even go anywhere. It will stop at where line number 4. Did it come to the end of my code? No, it did not. That is the challenge. I may have a long program. If it stops somewhere, then it's an issue. So we want to control what happens when it happens. So we give the try except. Now there could be different reason why your code could be failing. This is one, and I'm saying this is divide by 0. Now for divide by 0, there is actually a specific error. Now see what I will do. Here it is some issue happened. I don't know what issue. I do not have that clarity. But now I'm giving except thing divide by 0. 0 division. There it's helping me write it. And then I'm going to print a statement there and say, hey, divide by 0. Now let's rerun this code. So it has specifically captured that one based on that issue. Now here is my main logic. Always remember that. In the try block, I'll say start of my code and even the end of the code. Let me put it here. Okay, so that's my main code, and now comes my exceptions at the bottom. Now the other exceptions, like let us say you say if I is less than j. Okay, so this is another error. Let's see what happened in this case. If I is less than j, then I'll say x equals 10 and I'll print x here. Now, this was the same error one of the members was facing. I'm not sure in the session or previous. I lose my track sometimes. This is my divide by 0. This is a different error. Why is it a different error? Because I is not less than 0. In fact, let's not do this. I is greater than 0. So there's no value here. How will I be able to print? This is not a syntax error. So what's this syntax error? And has to be fixed before you execute. Now, in this case, it's not a syntax error. It doesn't have a problem with what it says. Now, it says, again, some issue happened. We don't know what that issue is. That issue is because of it. If I want to see this issue specifically, then what I could do is put that away from my try catch. So when the code is not in the try catch, it is not tested. So now it will tell me, see, that's a name error. That is the type of the issue that is found. Now what I will do is I'll put another issue here called name error. Variable name issue is initialized. So I'm giving clear instructions to what to do when this issue happens. Now what happens? It will go through everything. It will come out of this. See, it has not come to this end state. So what I'll do, start of my try. This is end of my try. So let's call it this block so there's no confusion for you. So start and end of the try block is good. Now let's put a start of the program and end of the program. This is important why I'm writing these print statements. Start my program. And at the end comes end. So look at what is happening. This logic is very critical. Start of my program and end of my program will always run. Okay? If an exception happens here, it will not go till end of my try block. From that exception line where it occurred, it will jump immediately to that specific exception. So each exception is handling one type of an error thing. I could have a lot of lines of code in here, each one doing different thing. So this is a name error. Now let us try one more. Just so file not found. So how do we do this? I will just take this file read and I'll try and say open this and print this. This is better. Okay, copy paste and then delete. So I have a log.txt and it will definitely print, but I don't have a log5.txt, right? Now what happens if I don't have what is that I'm saying? Where did I change that name? File not found error. Oh, I put it here. File not found error. File exists error is also there if you have to create. I'm sorry. Use X for create mode. Am I being clear to all team what we're doing? Am I losing the audience anywhere? Can I get a quick feedback? Right, this is done. Ting, 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 J. Now this basically says my file does not exist, so it should be able to print that. Can someone tell me why did not print the file not found error? It is here, right? It should have failed here. Because once it had this issue of variable not being found or initialized, then it came out from line 23 directly into this name error line 36. And it is done with that try block. It will not run anything in it anymore. So it will skip that. Sometimes hence you use different try catch, try except blocks. Now what I will do, I will fix this issue. How will I fix this issue? I'll say x equals 5. So I put some value into it, so it should not affect now. And here I'll say print 5, just so that it doesn't look using the same variable. Okay. So see, we've put the exceptions, and depending on the order, first one fails, it comes out. It won't even go to second, third, any other logic. So now when I go, it says file not found. Use X for create. That's how you're able to quickly create this try except blocks within Python team. Good, everyone? Any questions on these? So now, very quickly, I'm going to show you a try catch block here. It will not take too long. New class J17. This for the exceptions. Okay. So let's write this first few. Things like divide by 0. So I'm saying int x I comma I j k I equals to 20, j equals to 0, k equals I by j, and so a simple code as simple as it can be. Do you see any syntax error? If there's a syntax error, it will tell me, correct? Why doesn't it already know that j is 0? Because unless it comes to line 7 to execution, it does not know. What if that value is coming from a file or an Excel or an API? We don't know, right? It could come from anywhere. So I'm going to run this. So, and it gives me this error team. So to catch these errors, primarily I use the try catch block. We call it as a try catch block. And in Java, all the if, for conditions, loops, everything, functions, all are in blocks team. That is exactly what we are doing. Now comes our catch. Catch is basically simple exception E. And I'll say, I can print and say error is plus E. I could also do specific exceptions, like what if that exception is this, what if it is something else, and so on. So let me create those also, team. So it won't take too long. Catch file not found, we can say one is, that is easy to remember also. And some of you, if you work with automation tools like Selenium, you'll see that element not found exception is very common. I think you have to import some of these team. Catch file not found exception. I don't think there'll be. What is the file not found cannot be resolved, right? But let's save this first. Very serious. We'll see. Maybe I misspelled it. What was the other ones that we did in Python? Let me see that. So divide by 0. Name error is tough, team, because you have to declare within Java. 1 second, team. 1 minute, everyone. Sorry. So see the file errors, the same thing, we can put it in here, team. And I didn't speak about array index out of bounds. Let's try and do that one also here. Why did this come? I'll see. Error is E1, file not found, exception. See, now it's giving me the import. So I've imported it, save it. Come on, what's wrong with you? Remove catch clause. Why will I remove catch clause? I have no idea why this is not working for a second, team. Let me at least put this here. And let's create one more issue in this code. So this is divide by 0 issue. Now let's say index out of bounds. Index out of bounds basically says that I have an array, let us say A1, which is integers, all of them. And into this A1, I'll put equals 10, 20, 30, 40. And simple. Now, if I say A1 of 6 and try and print this, there's no sixth item, so it should basically fail. So if I run this as is, it gives me a Java language arithmetic exception by 0. So this is still occurring. Let's save this as 10. That was the error that's coming. Now error is array index out of bound exception. So I could write a separate catch statement for that. And that is what I was trying to write. Not sure why other one. Array index, I'm looking here, index out of bounds exception. And I will put something in here. I just have to import this, or no, it is already there. And so this worked fine. So I could give specific one here. I know what the error is. It'll tell me like this. This is fine for me. It's a generic error. But here, I'll say make sure array index is within bounds. So you're giving specific action. It doesn't have to be print statements, team. There could be a lot of function calls, logs, reports that you'll do when these simple issues happen. Let's just say this is E2. Whatever variable is there, it's going, that data is going. Now let's run this. So instead of executing this, we're getting our custom message here. If I don't have this, it'll print exception. And then there is something called finally here. And finally basically says after end of always gets executed at the end of try catch. So we call it as try catch here, and in Python we're calling it as more as try except. So whatever be the issue, that could get executed. The code will not fail. It will not go to the runtime. It will not crash in between. It will handle. So even if I have learned some lines here, this is so continue with other things and then rerun this. So that will continue with whatever you want. Though there were errors because we've handled. We got them, we've handled. This is the only one which is not being friendly with me. File not found. Not sure what the error is. Let's try once again. Last one, and then I'm going to be off team quickly. I have a lot of things to catch up on. Meanwhile, there's a list of assignments that I have created. I'll send it to you. All right. Oh, I didn't show finally in Python. So yes, in Python also, if you go to except, all this are there, right? So this is like catch statements. So this is a default exception, specific exceptions, and then finally. Finally, I can say print always runs at the end of try. Okay. That's fine. So always runs at the end of try. That's the finally here. And we have created it here. So I just have a few things, team. I'll put this in the chat. Some assignments that the other JPAC members are doing. It will be interesting for you to do the same. This is still helping, right? Unreachable catch block for file not found exception. This exception is never thrown from the try statement body. I will put that. I haven't added the file thing to it. That's why it's having an issue. Let's do a simple file handling for it. It's a simple file handling. I think that was why it was giving us that issue. And I just need to define where my file is. So that's my file, and I'll say this is log5.txt, which is not existing. But there were other issues here, so this I will correct. This I will correct. So it will go to array index out of bounds. Now it has not this one. Where is it? File not found exception. Now it is taken. The earlier I was not using any file interaction, so it was having that issue. How do I catch it if there's not? Now I added that code. It seems to be. Now let's see what happens. Basically says error is so and so, file not found, always get executed at the end of try, catch, and so on. Continue. So this is good set of code, team. Once you start practicing a little bit more. And where are those interview questions? Right here. I'm just going to put it in this chat for now. You should also try and do this for the weekend if you can, and I'll see you back on Monday evening my time, Tuesday morning India, and please look at it. Thank you everyone. That's it from my side. Sorry, longer session. Have a good weekend, everyone. Any questions before I sign out, please? Finally, I was taking a few while the session was happening. Then we're gonna have project discussion about which project are you talking, Shalan? Let's be clear. We're in a Java Python session. So this is not the NEOT. NEOT, I've created a project, but there's also live activities, actual projects that are going on. So I would want you to more work on that if possible. I'll send some updates on Skype. Okay. NEOT projects, yes, there are a couple of them starting out very quickly. Sure. Thank you, everyone. Have a good weekend. Bye now.